The sound of laughter echoed down the marble hallway, cruel, mocking laughter that didn't belong in the quiet corporate building after midnight. Ethan Walker tightened his grip on the old wooden mop, the one he used every night to clean the towering office floors of the prestigious Halden Enterprises. His uniform was wrinkled, his boots scuffed, his eyes tired. Yet behind that exhaustion burned a silent strength, the kind forged only by heartbreak, loss, and love for someone you'd give everything for. The laughter grew louder. 4 men in security jackets surrounded him, sneering, one of them tossing a half-eaten sandwich at his feet. "Hey janitor, missed a spot," one said, smirking. But when one of them shoved Ethan's bucket, spilling the dirty water over the shining floor right where Ethan's late wife had once stood years ago during her last day at work, something inside him snapped. Before anyone could blink, Ethan moved. The mop swung through the air like lightning, striking one man in the stomach, twisting in a fluid motion that sent another stumbling. The third lunged, but Ethan sidestepped, sweeping the mop's handle behind his knees, dropping him hard to the ground. The fourth reached for a baton, but Ethan's eyes went cold, steady, unshaken. A sharp twist, a sweep, a strike, and within seconds, all 4 men lay groaning on the floor. The mop dripped slowly, the air thick with shock. For a long moment, Ethan stood there in silence, chest heaving, eyes heavy with something deeper than anger, grief, pain, and a past he'd buried long ago. But if you believe in, make sure to our channel for more stories that prove heroes can come from anywhere. When the noise finally drew attention, the security cameras had already captured everything. The next morning, the footage spread through Halden Enterprises like wildfire. A janitor, the quiet single dad who mopped the floors at night, had single-handedly taken down 4 trained guards. Employees whispered, some amused, some afraid, and most in disbelief. But the one person who couldn't ignore it was Victoria Halden, the company's CEO, a woman known for her cold precision and relentless drive. She watched the footage in her glass office, the city skyline glittering behind her. The man on the screen looked calm even as he defended himself, controlled, disciplined, and strikingly familiar. Her assistant asked if she should fire him immediately. Victoria didn't answer. She just stared at the pause frame, the janitor's face half-lit, eyes distant. Haunted. Ethan didn't show up to work that evening. He was home, sitting on the worn couch beside his daughter, Lily, a bright-eyed 8-year-old who was the center of his world. Their small apartment smelled faintly of soup, the wallpaper peeling slightly at the corners. Lily was drawing superheroes. One of them looked suspiciously like her dad with a mop instead of a sword. "Daddy, when will you be a hero for real?" she asked innocently. Ethan smiled faintly, brushing her hair from her forehead. "Heroes are just people who keep going, sweetheart," he whispered. He didn't know that his words were truer than he realized, because his life was about to change forever. The next morning, a black car waited outside their apartment complex. 2 men in suits stood by it, one holding an envelope. Ethan felt a chill as he opened it, a summons from Halden Enterprises. Not a termination letter, but a request for a private meeting with the CEO herself. He hesitated. He'd spent years trying to stay invisible, to stay out of the world he once knew. But something inside him told him to go, maybe for his daughter's sake, maybe to face his past once and for all. When he entered the skyscraper that afternoon, every employee turned to look. Some whispered, some stared in awe, others in confusion. The same mop handle he had used was now propped neatly against the elevator wall as he rose to the top floor. Victoria Halden's office was a fortress of glass and silence. She stood behind her desk, elegant and sharp, her eyes unreadable. "Mr. Walker," she began, her tone clipped, but there was a tremor, faint, but there. "Do you realize the gravity of what you did last night?" Ethan said nothing. His calm unnerved her. She showed him the footage, expecting excuses, maybe an apology. But he simply said, "They pushed too far." Victoria leaned back, studying him. "You have military training, don't you?" she asked finally. He didn't answer, but the flicker in his eyes said everything. Her heart pounded as memories resurfaced, the headlines, the stories, the name that once dominated news feeds years ago. Ethan Walker wasn't just any man. He was a decorated ex-Special Forces operative, a man who had vanished after a mission went wrong, a mission that had cost several lives, including someone close to her. What Victoria didn't know was that Ethan's wife, Clara, had worked at Halden Enterprises before her illness took her. She had always spoken kindly of the company, of her belief that people could start over. When she passed, Ethan had promised to raise their daughter with humility, to keep her safe from the shadows of his past. That's why he'd taken the janitor job under a false last name, to stay near the hospital that once tried to save his wife, to stay invisible while keeping Lily's world stable. But now, invisibility was no longer an option. The world had seen him again. Victoria called security to escort him out, but before they arrived, something unexpected happened. Ethan placed an envelope on her desk, a simple, worn folder with her company's name printed on it. "This is what your father covered up," he said quietly. Inside were documents, evidence from years ago, showing that the failed mission he'd been blamed for was manipulated by Halden Enterprises' own defense subsidiary. The operation wasn't a failure, it was sabotage, done to profit from conflict contracts. Her father had buried it. Ethan had carried that guilt alone for years. Victoria froze, her face pale. The man she thought was a disgraced soldier had actually been protecting his team, even when the world turned its back on him. She looked up at him, speechless, tears burning at the edges of her eyes. "Why now?" she whispered. He looked toward the window, at the city glowing below. "Because truth shouldn't die with the people who try to do the right thing." And then he turned to leave. That night, Victoria didn't sleep. She spent hours poring over the files, comparing signatures, realizing the ugly truth: her father, the man she'd idolized, had destroyed good men for profit. Her entire career, her company, had been built on that lie. She felt something shatter inside her. The next day, she made a decision that would change everything. She called Ethan back, not as a janitor, but as a consultant, asking for his help to reform the company's security and ethics operations. At first, he refused. But when she told him she'd uncovered funds meant for veterans' families, funds her father had hidden, and that she wanted to use them to help people like him, he hesitated. For the first time in years, someone wanted to make things right, not for power, but for truth. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's life began to shift. He still mopped the floors from time to time, not because he had to, but because he wanted to remind himself of where he came from. Victoria visited his small apartment once, bringing art supplies for Lily. The little girl drew both of them together that evening, her dad with a mop, Victoria with a kind smile, the word hope scrawled above them. It was simple, but it made both adults fall silent for a long while.